Hello, everyone. So I wanted to talk about, I'm actually on two online courses this year. One of them is the Big Ideas, which I'm co-teaching with John Ippolito and Lisa Farley. But I'll be talking about a much smaller course that I'm doing right now, and that's it's a teaching methods course for physics and chemistry. And I'll start by saying, first of all, that I would almost say morally opposed to putting a methods course online before I did this. But the reason I did it was because the students I had, it's a small group of students that are doing chemistry and physics to begin with. But if they're doing it as concurrent students, they had 3-hour labs on top of their tutorials and their lectures. And then they had to accommodate also coming to class. And because they were a small group, the scheduling rarely worked. And so I thought it was worth it for all of us to be in the same group at the same time, more or less. And so that's why I decided to put the course online. I will say that there are 15 students in this class, so it's a small group. And 10 out of those 15 are concurrent students, and that's the largest number of concurrent students I've had as a percentage before. And I think that just speaks to their problem with trying to schedule the course in the first place. But when I was faced with a challenge, I had no idea what to do because, to me, so much could be learned face-to-face within the course that it didn't make sense to me to basically, what appeared to me was basically put a course in a can and then stick it up. That's the way I was thinking of it. So I thought, okay, I'm going back to first principles. This is what I think teaching is, that it's this overlap between relationship, technique, and knowledge. And I started with that. So for knowledge, not a problem. I've been teaching this course for a long time. I guess it's about 10 years now. For technique, that was about setting up the course, and I had lots of help from our IT. Like, we're really lucky to have our IT department. You guys were amazing helping me with this. And I also had some extra help from a student who was an alumnus of this program who also helped me out with this. So for the technique, I'm going to start with that, and then I'll get into the relationship, because the relationship aspect was the part I was worried about most. And so everything that I did in designing the course was designed to help with relationships. So here's what the course looks like. This is just the header, so important information is found there. And what I was trying to do was create a space for the students to interact without wasting too much energy figuring out where they were supposed to be. So just like Pam mentioned, I didn't want them to be confused as to where they're supposed to be and what they were supposed to be doing. So I wanted to make it as clear as possible. So this header is on the top all the time. But then when they scroll down, they would see the modules. And that's it. That's the first page that they see. And again, as Pam mentioned, better to have the modules listed here, and then they go behind it to find all of the interesting stuff. So here's a typical unit. So each unit basically had the same sort of headers, and I know you can't read them because they're kind of small, but it would sort of name the week, and then there'd be resources and readings and activities, and that's always there every week. And the activities were always things like quizzes. I also had a wiki where they would be able to brainstorm their ideas, and then they took those ideas and put them onto a Google Doc where they created some different things. So they were planning units and planning lessons together. But the main thing that I used for the students to interact is the forums. And the forums were all evaluated. Now the forums they run every week. I read all of their posts. And because the course depended on them participating properly in the forums, I marked them at 40% of their mark is the forums. But to make it easy for them to sort of know what they're supposed to do and when, there is a rubric for every unit, so that they can look at it and go, okay, I know that I have to have done these things, and if I don't do them, I don't get the mark. I also had interviews that I did with practicing teachers, and the teachers, some of them were graduates from this program, some from a program I used to teach in, some that had been that I'd worked with on their masters as well. So all of them were affiliated with York somehow. And so we did these interview videos, and I learned all sorts of lovely things about how to edit a video, and got help from IT for doing the captions for it. And so this is at the beginning of every one of the units. And so all of this was set up in the spring of last year, before the students arrived in September. So that was the canned part, and I thought, okay, now that I have this, I need to make sure that the students know that I'm there. That it's not just this thing that I just sort of wound up and set to work, and then I just mark stuff and they never see me again. So this is one of the videos that I've done. For the relationships, basically what I decided was, okay, the structure creates a space where they can interact. But now we have to actually talk to each other. So their very first assignment was that they had to do a video where they introduced themselves. And so this is my video where I was introducing myself. And did I mention I was totally mortified about having to put myself online? I think I'm almost used to it now, but anyway. So they all had to do this, and it was also part of the reason I made them do this video was because I also knew that they were going to be creating videos later to show their teaching, so that they would film themselves doing a lesson and then critique each other. And since I knew that was coming, this was a really easy way to get them going with creating their own videos. Also, I provided very specific information about how they should critique each other. So like really specific, like I said, okay, you can either use something positive, something negative, something positive, or you can do keep doing, start doing, stop doing, and that you just use that sort of way of doing it. And so at first it sounded really formulaic. You could see they had 3 sentences for their critique. Now they're quite elaborate, but I can still see the same pattern. So in a way, I was just sort of teaching them how to, well, not in a way, I was very definitely trying to teach them how to critique each other without hurting each other's feelings. Because, of course, in a text-based environment, that's really easy to do. It's really easy to misread what somebody means. And so I started on that right away. And then finally, although I read all of their, or do read all of their posts, I don't respond to each discussion thread. Instead, there is a video that I post every week, which is just sort of a general comment. And I have this thing where it only stays up for 7 days. So the title of the post is always, "This video will self-destruct in 7 days." Moodle is lovely. It allows you to do that. It actually doesn't destroy the video. What it does is it allows you to just say that this particular post will go away on a certain date. So I do that, and then I actually literally delete it from my YouTube channel. There are 2 reasons I do that. First of all, because the idea of these videos of myself floating around forever really didn't make me very comfortable. And secondly, it sort of added to the sort of idea that this is presence. Like, I'm here now telling you something in class this week. And then, just like it would be if it was a face-to-face class, then that's gone except for in your memory. And so that's part of the reason I do that. So I would say that for me, I was pleasantly surprised by how everything worked out. The students, I've even, like the other day, I was looking at their posts and I was reading the way that they're responding to each other, and I was like, wow, these guys, they're really thoughtful responses to each other. They really are thinking through the material. When they post a video, it's never anything slapdash. It's always, they put so much work into it. They're really good at going out and finding resources. And so I was surprised by this, because I really expected the online version of the course to be a shadow of the in-person, and it wasn't. So it enhanced my pedagogy because I had to be much more conscientious about planning, because like I said, I had everything, all of the structure was set up months before I'd even met the students. And so I really had to think through how everything was going to be presented and make sure that it was all nice and clear. But secondly, I really had to think through slow release. And by slow release, I mean, and this is just always a principle I use with the methods courses, is, you know, you start by showing them what to do, and then they practice with you right there with them, and then you let them do it on their own. And then if you're lucky, you have time for them to critique each other. And I really had to be specific about that when I was planning the original structure. And I think I do a much better job of it now because I had to think that through. Because it's way harder to undo things when it's online, because I had to release the entire, you know, 7-week module, 4-week module, and it's not like when it's face-to-face when I could sort of change things. Like if something doesn't work one week, I could just switch it the next week. Can't do that online because the students can see the whole unit, and so I had to have changed it before I opened up the unit for them. And so that really enhanced, I think, my own pedagogy. I think it enhanced their learning as well because they do have to be so independent. And I actually said in the initial introductory video, you're going to have to be resourceful. I'm not, you can post to ask the professor, but I'm not responding after hours. I'm not responding over the weekend. So they really had to, know that they have to think things through on their own. And I actually found that they had more opportunity for looking for resources outside of the classroom because it's online than they do when we're in face-to-face, because it was just easier for me to say, okay, go out and find an example of a demonstration and then critique it. And then it was easier for the students to then get together and critique each other's critiques as well. Because there is a time problem in person that doesn't really exist in the asynchronous environment, because everybody's allowed to pick their hour whenever they want it to be. And then they also, I would say, they got some very valuable insight into something that's an emerging thing in pedagogy, just in general. The teachers that I work with in schools, they're often in situations where they are using Moodle. They are using online things like Google Docs. They are posting things in their own YouTube channel. So this gives them that. And finally, the relationships with students, I don't think it's been any different this way than it was face-to-face. I did meet with students sometimes face-to-face, sometimes we meet via Skype, sometimes it's email back and forth, and there's some students I don't meet with at all, which is basically the same as it would have been if it were face-to-face. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that.